Thank you. Honourable members, question number 11 has been asked by the Honourable Chabani to the Minister of Home Affairs. The Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. The answer to the question relating to this bill is yes, it will be tabled in due course. The Cabinet decision of the 10th of April 2024 did include a number of comments that need to be addressed through supplementation in the bill, and that is what we will do. Chair, we also, of course, have a new administration elected by the people, and supplementing the bill will ensure alignment with the GNU's emerging priorities, with the work of Operation Vulindlela, and with the medium-term development plan. At the end of the day, all of this will ensure that we present the strongest possible bill. It is very important, Chair, that we get this process absolutely right, so that the bill that emerges from this process is absolutely watertight to legal challenges. I must emphasize this. I've made the point that Home Affairs needs to get out of court and onto service delivery. And so the work we do in this regard has to be legally watertight. Finally, to the Honourable Member, I think it's important to also point out that we have to actually prepare Home Affairs to effectively implement this bill and other legislation that is currently before the Portfolio Committee and that is emerging out of the work we do. That is precisely why it is so important that we pursue digital transformation, reform of Home Affairs, strengthening our internal capacity, including the understaffing problem that we have, so that we ensure the system is in place to effectively implement this bill, secure our borders, and enable growth and development. Thank you.
Thank you. The first opportunity to ask a supplementary question is that of the Honourable Chabani.
Thank you, House Chair. Thank you, Minister. The ANC has noted that extensive work has been done on the white paper by the executive and ultimately approved by Cabinet in the 6th administration. Notwithstanding areas of your concerns, Minister, that you have raised, what can you outline timeframe when will the bill be presented in Parliament? Given the experience of the last executive where bills are being brought in Parliament towards the end of the term. Thank you.
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the initial planning indicates the 31st of March 2027, but obviously with the supplementary comments that have come out of the Cabinet process and the emerging priorities that need to be reflected, as I mentioned, the medium-term development plan, as well as the work of Operation Vulindlela, that timeline will be something that we will have to look at in a dynamic process. But I think it is important to make the point that we will be working very diligently to make sure that what is ultimately tabled is something that passes legal muster and is implementable. I think the only thing worse than what the Honourable Chabani mentions is if a bill is passed and it gets tied down in legal processes for years or even decades in some cases, and ultimately becomes unimplementable. So we have to get this absolutely right. We have to make sure that the department is capable of implementing the measures that we want to take. And I'm confident that we can do that, certainly in this administration, agreeing with the Honourable Member that we should not leave things for the last second. And that's why this work is underway. And our commitment is to get it absolutely right so that it can withstand scrutiny at all levels. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Machi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honourable Minister, paragraph 9 of the white paper states that the department has no idea as to how many illegal immigrants are in South Africa, while paragraph 103 states that the sheer number of illegal foreigners in the country makes it impossible to detect all of them. Considering this, what are the expected outcomes and measures the white paper seeks to put in place in terms of clamping down on the influx of illegal immigrants at the local government? Thank you.
Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed. This is an issue that is really of great concern. It's like asking how many illegal weapons are out there, how much illegal cigarettes is out there. By its nature, it is illegal. And therefore, it's not something that comes forward and says, detect me, find me. By its nature, it seeks to evade detection and the law. But that is exactly why we have to focus on this area. We have to build systems to detect. We have to make sure, in fact, that we have continuous ability to track and monitor and audit the number of illegal immigrants in South Africa. And there's really only one way to do this, Chair. You have to build an integrated system that is able to scan any document that someone may present to you, is able to detect whether that's a fraudulent document, and in the case of it not being a fraudulent document, is able to link with various other databases to check whether this person may have a criminal record or anything of that kind. And so that's where the big focus for us really lies, so that we build those systems, including by using the technology that's available in the year 2024 to be able to detect fraudulent documents, for example, much more rapidly. I would point out the recent case we had with the Miss SA issue. I mean, there's a case that dates back 23 years, and you cannot believe the amount of resources required to actually investigate and verify some of these things, because these were, even then, of course, more paper-based, more manual processes even than they are today. And so that just consumes a huge amount of resources. If we want to efficiently clamp down on illegal immigration, if we want to understand the scale and the extent of the problem, given that these are not people that come forward and say, please detect me, we're going to have to really invest very aggressively in building the technology to help us do that. And as I said, that's really part of the commitment. Thanks.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ngubeni.
Thank you, Chair, honourable members. Thank you, Minister. I hear you saying, you want to get the process absolutely right. And while we are cognizant of the fact that the process for the white paper is underway, it must be concluded this year, but then, of course, the bill will come much later. But given the significant challenges currently faced by our country in managing immigration, including border management issues that include security, illegal immigration, and the processing of asylum seekers, how does the timeline that you speak about for the development and implementation of the proposed overhaul align with the urgent need for these reforms? And furthermore, Minister, can you give definitive assurances to South Africans of the interim measures in place to address these pressing concerns while the white paper and the bill processes are underway? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Before you take the floor, honourable members, you're reminded that follow-up questions are supposed to be a single topic and not subdivided. But Minister, you're welcome within your 2 minutes to take a bite at both cherries.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think it's an important issue. We can't wait, obviously, for a particular piece of legislation to pass and then deal with problems. So there is a huge amount of work that we have started doing and that will follow as the months progress to make sure that we put in place exactly the kind of system that I'm talking about. So, in fact, a bill, and we've seen this so many times in our country, you can write a piece of legislation, you can write an excellent bill. The question is, how are you able to implement it? If we're talking in this bill about our ability to monitor movement at the borders, you can write the sentence, let's monitor movement at the borders. How are you actually going to do that? Especially in a context, Honourable Chair, where the Border Management Authority is underfunded by 4.3 billion rand. You hear that correctly, 4.3 billion rand. When you are dealing with an environment in Home Affairs that's got 40% of the staff component that it requires. So there's just no way that we must believe, as important as legislation is and these reforms are, that alone is going to solve the problem. So we are very focused on the administration side, on the systems building side. And for that, we are currently in conversation with various stakeholders, people who can assist us with capacity, and we are looking very closely at how we can reform our internal processes to make sure that we start moving away from these vulnerable systems. I mean, again, just to use a recent example, Chair, the issue of the Libyans who came into this country, we are talking there about handwritten paper visas that someone was able to use with their pen, pick up this pen and write in that you can come into this country. The applications in some cases were not even complete. There was not a specific selection of, I want this kind of visa. And yet, because human discretion allows for people to make these decisions in some cases at the whim. They were able to issue those documents, and noting further in this case that was actually an official from DIRCO. Why is that happening? We are reliant on a department like DIRCO because we don't have enough staff. So you really
Thank you,
are in a vicious
Minister.
cycle, and we want to deal with that. Thank you.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ghana.
Honorable Minister, there's the first safe country principle for asylum seekers. Do you believe that this is a principle worth pursuing? The first safe country principle. Do you believe that it is a principle worth pursuing for this country, and what are you going to do to ensure that it's realized? And secondly, do you believe that what we are dealing with in South Africa, it's a question of true asylum seekers, or we are dealing with economic migrants? Thank you.
The Minister.
I note the two cherries again, Chair, but it's fine. Just on the second part of the question, Honourable Member, we have to have systems in place to differentiate between the two. There's certainly, undoubtedly, too many cases of economic migrants who claim asylum, for example, when they would be arrested. And so we must differentiate from those cases and genuine asylum cases. But the principle there is correct, the first safe country principle. And this requires international coordination. Because the truth is, if someone crosses, 6, 7 borders in order to get to South Africa, and some of those countries would be classified as safe, then we're sitting with a problem because we can't eventually take on the whole world's problem. We have to coordinate with international partners to make sure that that principle is actually applied. And so that's why I think there's an important conversation to be had globally as well, with partners at the UN, for example, to say we know the world is dealing with various crises. We've got wars, we've got conflicts, we've got migration issues everywhere, but you can't just leave Africa and forget about migration in this continent, and specifically in the case of South Africa as a big receiver. And so I think we're going to have to do more in this administration to put pressure internationally as well and say you're going to have to come to the table, enforce those kind of principles as we go forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable members.